Hey everybody, it's Party Elite, and today I'm reviewing a brand new game that I've personally been waiting for a very long time.
So either Hammond is onto something, or his brain's got the rot, and he's about to kill a bunch of good stalkers. Guess we gotta find out. Me and Ducks have to go north. Farther from home than we've ever been. It's dangerous. Ducks thinks I'm crazy to press on. I don't disagree with him.
Mutant Year Zero Road to Eden is a post-apocalyptic real-time adventure game blended with turn-based tactics that is based off the world and systems of a pen-and-paper RPG by the name Mutant Year Zero. Before I dive in, I want to give full disclosure that I did receive a review copy from the developers, but as always, that does nothing to sway my opinion. If, after watching this review, you're interested in picking the game up for yourself, consider using the affiliate link in the description down below and under the eye at the top right corner of the screen to support the channel as you buy. There's also a 10% discount with the promo code PARTYELITE that you can copy from the description down below as well. Now without further ado, let's begin. Is Mutant Year Zero all it's quacked up to be, or is it a bit of a bore? The first thing that becomes apparent with Mutant Year Zero Road to Eden is that it scales from a normal difficulty to downright punishing, and the developers want you to play on very hard difficulty as the intended experience. The inclusion of Iron Mutant is a terrifying thought because the game really is quite unforgiving in how quickly death comes. If you're up for a challenge, the game is looking to deliver, and it wears that badge with pride. As a blend of turn-based tactical action and real-time third-person adventure gaming, there is a lot of emphasis on patience, timing, placement, and tactical thinking. This blend is definitely worth talking about, as I think it's one of the strongest points and one of the most unique points of the game, and it's quite effectively executed. A lot of your time will be spent traversing the world in real time, leading your party around, finding scrap, ancient artifacts, broken gun parts, and equipment, all that can be used to buy upgrades, further equipment, and abilities back at the Ark, which is a destination on the map that acts as a hub for a variety of shops and information. It's your headquarters, though you can't really influence it yourself like in, say, XCOM. It's more of a hub where you can do a lot of purchasing and get a little bit of information. As you travel around, you'll have the option of brazenly running around with your trusty flashlight on, using it to highlight the sometimes hard-to-find loot, or you might prefer to sneak around with your flashlight off, especially when you're particularly close to enemies, as they can naturally see you a lot more easily if you're carrying a bright light source in your hand. At times, this will give you the option to completely ignore an engagement, dancing around enemy patrol routes and lines of sight with some dexterous fingerwork, and at other times, this will allow you to set yourself up for success for a seemingly inevitable engagement. As enemies patrol around the maps, you can take them out one at a time, and if you're using silent weapons to do so, you'll be able to thin out the enemy numbers without alerting them, staying out of an engagement, preventing a full-on shootout from kicking off. So you'll spend a lot of your time in this real-time mode if you're looking to survive, especially since, as mentioned before, the game can be quite punishing. You'll find yourself outnumbered more often than not, and to add to the pain, you'll find yourself outgunned or up against particularly resilient foes right from the start. Without taking advantage of the real-time stealth elements, you're going to be at a huge disadvantage. To me, this is a major plus point. In this blend of two gameplay modes, we get to see a very seamless transition between the two as you split your party into parts and find ideal positions for each, triggering the tactical combat only when absolutely necessary or ideal. That is, of course, only if you're good at it. Stray into enemy line of sight, flub a shot, or go loud out of desperation, and the enemy responds quickly and aggressively. This whole system creates a lot of tension that adds to the enjoyment factor, and the feeling of satisfaction that comes from stealthily clearing an area is fantastic. As a relatively impatient person, I found myself wanting to excel at the stealth aspects. This was perhaps the most patient I've been in a video game without feeling bored, though I'll touch a bit more on that later. In the tactical mode, everybody is restricted to 2 actions per turn, with an attack always ending the turn. Mutations, or skills, can modify how action points are spent, and they can unlock more special abilities, but again, we'll dive into that in a bit. With very low hit points across the board, especially at the start, the tide of an engagement can turn very quickly, and with the harsh mistress that is RNG, you will sometimes find pain and sometimes pleasure. Different guns bring different abilities, and gun mods will help alter everything from optimal ranges to damage type and output. Your gear will change stats and attributes too, often in a rather hilarious way that makes no logical sense, and so you'll find yourself doing some very basic inventory management to optimize all your characters and then setting them up for success during the real-time phase so they're going to have the best chances in the tactical phase. Abilities themselves are also available based on how you level up your characters, and rather than regular cooldown timers, most of them need a certain number of kills to happen before they're made available again. These abilities are presented in a way that ties into the game's universe and the tabletop system it's based off as well, if I'm not mistaken. In this post-apocalyptic future, everybody is a mutant, and so the abilities themselves take the form of major and minor mutations. They're varied enough, though at times the overlap of abilities between characters feels a little unfortunate. This feeling comes primarily from the fact that the skill trees are actually just skill paths. They all go from top to bottom in a relatively narrow sense, and so any overlapping is very easily evident. While this might be how the tabletop system worked, I'm not sure, I never played it myself, it just feels a little shallow where a lot of fun could be had. I see things like frog legs and moth wings, and I applaud the attitude and spirit behind them, and then I see the multiple characters having the same option, which basically boils down to drawing aggro or adding an extra action point. Even if the skills were slightly different, or there were more potential skills to be had and selected from, and maybe some locked others away, or there was a bit more of a complexity behind picking skills for a character, I feel like this problem would very easily go away, so it's a little unfortunate that it's been simplified so much and there's so much overlap. Nonetheless, despite the rather shallow approach to speccing your characters, we do see how each character is somewhat tailored. Typically, I like my RPG characters to be blank slates, at least the one that supposedly represents me, the player. But there are times when I prefer having each character be, well, a unique character. And this is one of the times that it works rather well, particularly because the characters are so well done. In fact, the whole world is very well done. And when I say that, I don't just mean that it's nicely thought out in its world or story, I mean it's fantastically written, gorgeously presented, and amazingly acted.
Let me ask you guys something. Is that a metal man working in there? Like a man made out of metal?
Each of the mutants you lead has a personality. They have flavor and attitude, and it all comes across when they remark on things or when there's banter. The writing is great too, and the personality of the game always shines through. This is probably the most fun I've had reading item descriptions. There's just so much personality oozing out of every single pixel. Even some of the trash talk between enemies is hilarious. I genuinely had a few chuckles as I played to review, and there are some very delightful moments.
Hey, you
Stay
on the
back.
truck. Ugly face. You see anything out there? No, there's nothing out there. It's the zone. And stop calling me ugly face. Look at your face. I can't look at my face, it's my face. Now put your eyes out there and look for intruders.
Look at this description of the hipster fruit charger. That's amazing. And then look at the misunderstanding of the word axe for electric guitars. I found this hilarious. And listen to how they talk about defibrillators.
Defibrillator. There's instructions to use this on somebody who's lying down. Maybe something to aid sleep or to relax.
This sounds relaxing. Maybe I'll use it to unwind when I get back to the Ark.
I love the weird, wacky perspective, and beyond comedy, it really does make you wonder what impressions our commodities create of us to outsiders. I thought it was really well represented. I feel like the conversations are, believable, I suppose, to an extent, but most importantly, perhaps, they have that personality, that attitude, and that comedy that is otherwise missing from post-apocalyptic games, I suppose. And yeah, the game looks and sounds great, there's no doubt about it. Apart from some camera annoyances, things are very nicely presented, and even the UI has personality.
Gotcha.
Now the lip syncing, the few times where it's relevant, is way off, and that's probably my biggest visual hang-up. I just couldn't help but wonder why all sequences that required lip syncing weren't presented with the gorgeous illustrated style instead. It was probably a cost thing, but it's definitely noticeable. I suppose we could chalk it down to mutations. Humanoid lips don't need to move to vocalize anymore in this post-apocalyptic future, I suppose. Another issue, albeit minor and easily patched out, is the fact that after you partake in stealthy operations, if you switch between party members and they're split up, they'll actually default to having their flashlights on. Now, I've been quick enough 9 out of 10 times to, just quickly respond and prevent myself from being spotted, but it just took that 1 out of 10 times for me to be spotted in a non-ideal situation, and it was very frustrating. A small bug, but one that can ruin a playthrough if it triggers at the wrong time. Imagine an Iron Man or an Iron Mutant run where it happens and you lose half your party because of it. Extremely frustrating, potentially. Now, at least I think it's a bug. It should be fixed to being default off flashlights, in my opinion. Another weird glitch, though this one is, I guess, more visual than anything else, has to do with pathfinding. Sometimes your party members will opt not to use a ladder that you used, and they'll instead go gallivanting across the map in some weird path, expose themselves to the enemy, and then join you in your hiding spot. However, this doesn't trigger the alarms, but it is very immersion breaking, visually at least, so hopefully an easy fix, but something that needs to be fixed. I found it hilarious in the wrong way for a game that's otherwise funny in the right way. Now, the other major issue has to do with the exploration aspect of the game. Moments ago I was singing its praise, I know, but there are two sides to the real-time exploration adventure elements. The tense stealth and setup moments that have you creeping about, creating scenarios and finding opportunities for success, and the scavenging. While the former is great, the latter, which is the scavenging, falls apart because of one crucial reason: speed. Or at least the sense of speed. Or the sense of no speed, the lack of speed. Everyone always feels like they're just slowly ambling along, even when running with a flashlight on. The shortest off-road trek feels like a slog. Anything that doesn't take you directly from point A to point B starts to feel like a waste of time, which really is quite unfortunate since the game wants you to go around every section. It wants you to find the scrap and gun parts and artifacts, and hell, with how wonderfully written some things were, I found myself bearing with the ambling just to see more fun flavor text. There were many occasions, however, where my patience was wearing very thin and I was getting frustrated. The camera control in this real-time phase is also weird. It's a strange third-person angle, very high up, and it rotates very slowly. It further adds to this weirdly slow pace of the adventuring sections. There's nothing to really break those sections up either, apart from when action is about to kick off. There's no platforming or timing-based activity, no puzzles, I guess. The only fun to be had is coming across little tidbits of lore. As I mentioned earlier though, once you're in an action or stealth action scenario, the system shines and pairs wonderfully with the tactical system. And finally, while I don't mind the tailor-made maps, I do like a bit of procedural generation in my games. Honestly, this is neither here nor there, but I think you should know, each section of the world map is handcrafted. That means that each engagement is tailored and designed. Each situation is built by a designer. Now, I love that approach because it is a very designed and curated experience from start to finish. But I feel like it's important for you to know as a consumer potentially that we don't actually have an open world here. It does work maybe for the better in a barren post-apocalyptic setting, but on the downside it means there's not much room for emergent gameplay, for replayability, it's a little reduced as a result, and yeah, sure, RNG will still determine outcomes, but if I just cared for dice rolls, then I'd be playing dice. Time for a judgment call, and as many of you already know, I stay away from numerical scores. I find them arbitrary and meaningless, drawing abstract comparisons. What matters instead is the enjoyability factor. When I did my preview a month or so ago, I had some hesitations about the game. Sitting down with it over the weekend, I can honestly say I was so engrossed in it at times that I was forgetting to take notes and clips. There are a couple of bugs that should definitely be ironed out, and really they might already be with a day one patch, but apart from these minor annoyances, there is an undeniable charm to the world, and everything from the art to the voice acting to the writing comes together beautifully to express that charm. When it comes to the gameplay mechanics, we see systems that come together very nicely to create some serious tension in both stealth and combat situations. As damning as RNG can be, Mutant Year Zero makes positioning and patience such a large priority that RNG quickly becomes irrelevant if you overcome it using other provided mechanics, and to me, that's a major highlight. As a player, I felt like I wasn't just being led down a path with my hand held either. Despite the non-open world and non-procedurally generated approach, it was quite the opposite in fact. I felt like I was being tossed into the wild, told where to go, and I just had to make it there by hook or by crook, being challenged by the game designers every step of the way. And man, oh man, the game is punishing in the best ways. I felt responsible for every bad move. Outside of what I assumed, it was a bug with the flashlights, not once did I yell, "Oh, come on, that's just unfair," or anything like that. I paid for my mistakes just like I celebrated my successes. Yes, I can recommend this game wholeheartedly.
Bullseye!
Don't fuck with the Arc Mutants!
It actually makes me want to pick up the pen and paper RPG as well, if I'm perfectly honest. From its sense of humor to its sense of tension, Mutant Year Zero balances real-time adventure and turn-based tactics with near excellence outside of a few small issues that will hopefully be patched out in short order. I hope you guys found this review informative. If you do pick up the game, let me know your own thoughts down below. As always, make sure you subscribe to the channel for more strategy gaming content, including reviews, previews, let's plays, and more. And a massive thanks as always to my channel members and patrons for their monthly support. And of course, a massive thanks to you for watching. Until next time, cheers.
We are the greatest!